The night was quiet in the small human colony that rested on the edge of the forest. Stars spread across the sky like tiny lanterns, and the sound of insects filled the air. Arun walked back to his workshop after repairing a broken farming machine for a neighbor. His path was lit only by a small lantern he carried. He enjoyed the silence of the night, but on this evening, something felt different. There was a faint vibration in the air, like the ground itself was humming. Arun stopped and looked around. His eyes caught a trail of light in the distance. It looked like a shooting star, but instead of burning out, it fell deeper into the forest. A low crash echoed, followed by smoke rising into the sky. Arun's heart raced. He thought about ignoring it, but his curiosity was stronger. He decided to follow the smoke. The forest was thick, with tall trees whose branches spread like arms. Arun moved carefully, pushing aside leaves and stepping over roots. The smoke grew heavier as he got closer. Soon he reached a clearing where the ground was scorched. A small craft lay broken, its surface glowing faintly. Pieces of metal were scattered across the area. Arun had never seen anything like it. Then he heard a sound. It was soft at first, like a whisper, then a cry of pain. Arun's eyes widened. He moved closer and saw her. A girl lay beside the wreck. Her skin had a strange silver tone that reflected the light of the flames. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly in the dark. She looked young, not much older than him. But what made Arun's chest tighten was the sight of her leg. It was torn, not bleeding like a human, but damaged in a way he could not understand. Half of it was gone, leaving her unable to move. The girl tried to pull herself away, but she fell back in pain. Arun raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. His voice was calm and steady. "I will not hurt you. Please stay still. I want to help." The girl looked at him with fear and pride. Her breathing was heavy. She tried to speak but her words were broken, not human, yet Arun understood the meaning behind her tone. She did not trust him. Arun knelt down slowly. He looked at the wreck again. No other being seemed to be there. It was only her. Carefully, he took off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. She shivered but did not resist. He noticed how cold her body felt. He spoke again, softly, as if talking to a frightened child. "You are safe. I will take you with me. I will help you." The girl's eyes studied his face. She seemed to see something in him that made her pause. She gave the faintest nod. That was enough for Arun. He lifted her carefully, feeling how light she was. Her frame was delicate, but her grip on his arm was surprisingly strong. The journey back to the colony felt longer than usual. Every few steps, Arun looked down to make sure she was still awake. She kept her gaze fixed on him, as if trying to understand why he would help a stranger. By the time they reached the workshop, Arun was sweating from both effort and nervousness. His workshop was small, filled with tools, scraps of metal, and half-finished machines. He placed her gently on a clean bench. The girl winced but stayed silent. Arun quickly locked the doors and pulled the curtains. He knew that if the colony found out, panic would spread. People were not ready to see someone like her. Arun brought water and offered it to her. She looked at the cup, then at him, uncertain. To ease her worry, he drank from it first and then handed it back. She hesitated, then drank slowly. Her breathing steadied a little. He wanted to ask her many questions, but he knew she needed rest first. Instead, he searched for bandages and tried to cover her damaged leg. Up close, it was even stranger. It was not flesh like his but a mix of living tissue and something that looked like smooth crystal. The missing part was beyond his skill to heal with simple medicine. He tied the bandages as best as he could, knowing it was only temporary. The girl watched him silently. After a while, she spoke a single word in broken human language. Why? Arun paused, meeting her gaze. Because you need help. And I can help. Her eyes softened slightly, though her face still carried pain. She closed her eyes, whispering something he did not understand. It sounded like thanks. Arun sat nearby, his mind racing. He had always been good with machines, repairing tools, building small devices. But this was beyond anything he had faced. Yet as he looked at her leg, a thought formed. Maybe he could make something. Not flesh, not crystal, but something that could let her walk again. The girl opened her eyes again and tried to say her name. The word was soft and almost musical. Myra. Arun repeated it slowly. Myra. She nodded. He smiled faintly. I am Arun. The night stretched on. Arun gave her a blanket and stayed awake, sketching on scraps of paper. Designs of joints, frames, and supports filled the pages. His mind refused to rest. Myra had trusted him enough to let him bring her here. He could not fail her. Outside, the forest was silent again, as if the crash had never happened. But inside the small workshop, a promise had been made. A human had chosen to help an alien stranger. Myra's eyes grew heavy, and she drifted into sleep, her body finally relaxing. Arun looked at her and whispered to himself. You will walk again. I swear it. The sun rose slowly above the colony, casting golden light over the small houses and fields. Inside the workshop, Arun was already awake. He had not slept much during the night. His thoughts had been filled with ideas of how to help Myra. The memory of her broken leg and the look in her eyes had stayed with him. He knew that ordinary medicine was not enough. She needed something more, something he would have to create with his own hands. Myra was still resting on the bench, her silver-toned skin reflecting the morning light. She looked fragile yet strong in a quiet way. Arun placed a blanket over her more carefully, making sure she stayed warm. When she finally stirred, her large eyes opened slowly. For a moment she looked confused, then she remembered where she was. Her gaze turned toward Arun, who was already busy at his work table. Arun greeted her with a gentle smile. Good morning, Myra. Myra tilted her head slightly. She repeated the word slowly, as if testing it on her tongue. Morning. Arun nodded, happy that she was trying to learn. He poured some warm water into a small cup and offered it to her. She accepted it with both hands, drinking slowly. Her movements were cautious, but her eyes showed curiosity. Arun placed some bread and fruit on a plate. Food, he said, pointing to it. Myra studied the plate, then looked at him. He picked up a piece of bread, took a bite, and smiled. Myra finally reached for the fruit and tasted it. Her expression softened. As she ate, Arun spoke gently, repeating words for simple objects in the room. Table. Chair. Door. Light. Myra listened carefully, repeating each word with a soft voice. Though her accent was different, she was learning quickly. Arun realized she was intelligent and eager to understand. After the meal, Arun began working on his sketches. He wanted to design a leg that would help Myra walk again. She watched him closely, tilting her head whenever he adjusted a drawing. Finally, she pointed at the paper and asked in broken words, "What, this?" Arun held up the sketch. "For you. Leg. Walk again." Myra's eyes widened. She shook her head, her voice quiet but firm. "No, cannot. Broken." Arun leaned closer, speaking slowly so she could understand. "Not broken. I can make. You will walk." Myra stared at him in silence, her eyes filled with both doubt and hope. After a long pause, she whispered, "Why help?" Arun set the paper aside. He met her gaze directly. "Because it is right. Because you need help. Because you are not alone." Myra blinked several times. She lowered her eyes and touched the blanket around her shoulders. Slowly, she gave a small nod. Over the next few days, the bond between them grew stronger. Arun spent his mornings gathering metal scraps from old machines and farming tools. He sorted wires, screws, and small gears, searching for pieces that could fit together. Myra often watched him, sometimes pointing at objects with curiosity. Arun explained each one in simple words. She repeated them, smiling whenever she got them right. At first, Myra seemed uncomfortable with the idea of Arun working on her damaged leg. She pulled away when he tried to examine it. Her pride made her resist. In her culture, perhaps weakness was something to be hidden. But Arun never forced her. He simply showed her the parts he was building, letting her see the effort he was putting into it. Slowly, she began to trust him more. One afternoon, Arun sat at the table with pieces of metal spread before him. He held up a small joint he had crafted. It was rough but strong. "See, Myra. This will move like this." He bent it carefully. Myra leaned closer, her eyes bright with curiosity. She touched the joint with her fingers. "Move, walk." Arun smiled. "Yes. Move. Walk." She gave a small laugh, the first sound of joy he had heard from her. It was soft and light, but it filled the room with warmth. Arun felt his heart lift. He realized that this project was no longer just about fixing her leg. It was about giving her hope. At night, when the colony grew quiet, Arun and Myra often sat by the lantern. Arun would show her small objects and teach her their names. She learned quickly, surprising him with how much she remembered. In return, she taught him a few words from her own language. The sounds were unusual, but Arun tried his best. Myra would sometimes correct him with a gentle smile. One evening, Arun asked her carefully, "Myra, you're home." "Where?" Myra looked up at the stars through the small window. Her voice grew soft. "Far. Many stars. Father, there." Arun listened with interest. He wanted to ask more, but he could see the sadness in her eyes. She missed her home, her people, and her father. He did not press further. Instead, he said, "Here, safe. With me." Myra looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded and whispered, "Safe." Days turned into weeks. Arun's design grew more complete. He built a frame shaped like a leg, adding joints and supports. He used soft padding from old clothes to make it comfortable. It was not perfect, but it was strong. Every day, he showed Myra the progress, and every day she grew more hopeful. During this time, Myra also began to adapt to human life. She learned how to drink tea, how to eat bread with her hands, and even how to hum along when Arun played simple tunes on a small music box he had repaired. The sound of her humming filled the workshop with peace. But there were also moments of struggle. Sometimes Myra grew frustrated, hitting the table when she could not say a word correctly. Sometimes she looked at her broken leg with bitterness, turning away from Arun. In those moments, Arun never lost patience. He simply sat beside her and said quietly, "We will do this together." One stormy night, the rain poured heavily outside. Lightning flashed, and thunder rolled across the sky. Myra sat near the window, her body tense. She whispered something in her own language, her eyes filled with fear. Arun walked over and placed a lantern beside her. "It is only rain. Only storm." Myra shook her head. "No, crash, fire, storm." Arun realized the storm reminded her of the night her ship fell. He sat beside her and gently placed a blanket over her shoulders. "Safe here. No crash. No fire. Only rain." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. For the first time, she leaned against him, her trust finally complete. Arun stayed with her until the storm passed, the sound of rain becoming a gentle rhythm that eased her fear. As days passed, the workshop no longer felt like a place for machines alone. It became a home for two souls from different worlds. Arun's tools lay scattered across the tables, and Myra's presence filled the air with quiet strength. She practiced speaking more words, her voice growing clearer each day. Sometimes she even tried to help him by handing him tools, laughing when she mixed up their names. Arun worked late one evening, adjusting the last pieces of the leg. His hands were tired, but his spirit was strong. He looked at Myra, who was watching him with eager eyes. He thought about the journey they had shared since the night of the crash. Trust had been built slowly, piece by piece, just like the leg he was making. Finally, he placed the nearly finished piece on the table. He looked at her and said softly, "Soon, Myra. You will walk." Myra's eyes shone with both disbelief and hope. She reached out and touched his hand gently. In her soft voice, she said one word she had learned perfectly. "Friend." Arun felt warmth spread through him. He smiled and nodded. Friend. In that simple word, all barriers between them seemed to vanish. The human and the alien girl, once strangers, were now bound by trust. The promise of a new beginning was close, and both of them knew it. The morning air was cool, and sunlight streamed through the small window of Arun's workshop. He stood at his work table, holding the final piece of the prosthetic leg. For weeks he had shaped metal, adjusted joints, and tested small parts. Now it was ready. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the finished leg, polished and fitted with soft padding. It was not perfect, but it was strong, and it was made with care. Myra sat quietly on the bench where she often rested. Her eyes followed Arun's movements with both fear and excitement. She had watched him work every day, and she had seen the leg grow from scattered scraps of metal into something that almost looked alive. She touched the edge of the blanket around her shoulders and whispered, "Ready?" Arun nodded. His voice was steady, though his heart was racing. "Yes. Ready." He carried the prosthetic over to her and knelt beside her. Myra's body stiffened at first, but then she took a deep breath and placed her hand gently on his arm. Her eyes told him she trusted him. Arun carefully lifted the damaged part of her leg and placed the prosthetic near it. He explained each step in simple words so she would not be afraid. "Strap here. Lock here. Tight. Safe." Myra watched closely as he secured the straps around her leg. The sound of the locks clicking into place filled the room. Arun adjusted the angle, making sure it was balanced. He stepped back slightly, his eyes fixed on her. "Try," he said softly. Myra hesitated. She placed her hands on the bench, bracing herself. Her first attempt to stand ended quickly as she lost balance and sat back down. Her face showed frustration. She shook her head, whispering, "No good." Arun knelt beside her again. "Not no good. First try. Again." Myra looked into his eyes, searching for his certainty. Then she nodded. She placed her hands back on the bench and pushed herself upward. The prosthetic touched the ground with a metallic sound. Her body trembled as she tried to balance. Arun stayed close, ready to catch her if she fell. For a moment she stood. Her eyes widened in shock. Then her body wavered, and she sat back down again. But this time she was breathing hard, not from pain but from amazement. She whispered, "Stand." "I stand." Arun smiled. "Yes. You stand again." She tried once more. This time Arun placed his hand lightly against her arm, giving her balance. Slowly, carefully, she rose to her feet. The workshop grew silent except for the sound of her breathing. Myra stood taller than she had in weeks. Her silver-toned skin glowed faintly in the morning light. Tears formed in her eyes as she looked down at the leg. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Walk." Arun nodded. He stepped back slightly and held out his hand. "One step." Myra lifted her foot, the prosthetic moving stiffly but surely. She placed it on the ground and shifted her weight. The sound of the metal touching the floor echoed in the room. She gasped softly. Then she moved her other foot forward. Step by step, she crossed the room, leaning on Arun for balance but walking on her own. When she reached the far wall, she turned slowly, her eyes filled with wonder. "I walk," she said, her voice breaking. Arun's chest tightened with pride. "Yes. You walk." Myra suddenly laughed. It was a sound full of joy and disbelief. She lifted her arm slightly as if celebrating. She took another step, then another. Though her movements were uneven, every step was a victory. For weeks she had been bound to the bench, trapped by weakness. Now she was free. She turned toward Arun and whispered a word from her own language. He did not know its meaning, but the tone was filled with gratitude. She stepped closer and touched the prosthetic with her hand, then touched her chest, then pointed at him. The message was clear. "You give me strength." Arun felt a deep warmth in his heart. He nodded. "Yes. Strength. Yours." For the rest of the day, Myra practiced walking. At first, she leaned heavily on Arun, but slowly she began to trust the leg more. She stumbled, laughed, and tried again. Each fall was met with determination. Arun guided her patiently, adjusting the straps when needed. By evening, Myra was able to walk across the room without holding his arm. When she finally sat down to rest, she looked at him with shining eyes. "Arun, thank you." It was the first time she had said his name so clearly. The simple words carried more weight than anything else he had ever heard. That night, they shared a quiet meal together. Arun felt exhausted from the work and the emotions of the day, but his spirit was lighter than ever. Myra hummed softly as she ate, a tune that reminded him of the gentle sound of wind through trees. The workshop, once filled with only the noise of tools, now felt alive with hope. In the days that followed, Myra grew stronger. She practiced every morning, walking longer distances around the workshop. She even began to help Arun with small tasks. She would hold tools, carry light objects, and sometimes try to copy his movements when he repaired machines. Though she still spoke in broken words, she used them with more confidence. One afternoon, Myra surprised Arun by asking a question he had not expected. "Your people see me?" Arun paused. He looked at the closed windows and locked doors. He had kept her hidden to protect her, knowing the colony might react with fear. "Not yet," he said slowly. "They may not understand." Myra tilted her head. "Fear me?" Arun nodded. "Yes. Fear what they do not know." Myra looked down at her new leg. She tapped it lightly with her fingers. "But walk same." Arun gave a small smile. "Yes. Same. But people need time." She accepted his words with a quiet nod. Still, her eyes carried a longing. She wanted to be seen not as something strange but as someone who could stand, walk, and live like others. That evening, she walked outside for the first time since the crash. The sun was setting, painting the sky with orange and pink. She stood in the open air, breathing deeply. Her prosthetic touched the earth with each step, leaving marks in the soil beside Arun's footprints. She raised her face to the wind and closed her eyes. For the first time, she felt free. Arun watched her, his heart full of pride. He realized that the gift he had given her was not just the ability to walk. It was dignity, strength, and hope. She was no longer broken. She was whole again. Later that night, Myra spoke softly while looking at the stars. "Father, see me now. Walk again." Arun glanced at her. "Your father will be proud." Myra's eyes filled with determination. "Yes. Must tell him." Arun felt a sudden unease at her words. He knew that her people must be far more advanced than his own. If they came searching for her, what would they think of a human who had built her a leg from scraps of metal? He did not know the answer, but he pushed the thought aside. For now, it was enough that she could walk. In the following days, Myra began to show him more of her knowledge. She drew symbols on paper, trying to explain things about her world. Arun could not understand everything, but he listened carefully. He realized that she trusted him completely now. She had opened her heart to him because he had given her back her strength. One evening, as they sat near the lantern, Myra placed her hand on his and spoke clearly. "Arun, friend. True friend." Arun felt the weight of those words deeply. He knew that in helping her, he had gained more than he had given. He had found a bond that crossed worlds. And so, the gift of strength was not only hers. It was his as well. In giving her the power to stand, he had found his own purpose. The workshop no longer felt like a place for machines alone. It was now a place of miracles, where a human and an alien girl had built trust, hope, and friendship. What neither of them knew was that the stars above had already begun to listen. The first rays of dawn broke over the small human colony, casting soft light over the houses and fields. Arun woke early, as usual, and walked to his workshop. Myra was already awake, sitting near the window and watching the sky. The past weeks had changed her. She walked confidently on her prosthetic leg, her steps steady and strong. Yet there was something in her eyes that had grown heavier, a longing that Arun did not fully understand. "Morning, Myra," he said gently. She turned and smiled, a little shyly. "Morning, Arun." Arun noticed that her gaze returned often to the sky. "Thinking about your father?" he asked. Myra nodded slowly. "Must tell, must show. I walk now." Arun's heart tightened. He knew that her father was not close. Her people had traveled far across the stars. He also knew that revealing her presence to the colony could be dangerous. Fear and misunderstanding were easy among humans. He did not want anyone to hurt her, and yet he realized that the moment was coming when she would try to reach her people. For several days, Arun focused on improving Myra's comfort with the prosthetic leg. He adjusted the joints so she could run lightly, added soft padding to prevent bruises, and built a small harness so she could carry objects more easily. Myra was a fast learner. Each day she moved with more confidence, testing her strength, laughing when she stumbled, and celebrating each success. One afternoon, Myra went to the far corner of the workshop. She carried a small device that Arun had not seen before. It looked delicate, made of a material that seemed to glow faintly under the light. She placed it carefully on the table and looked at Arun. "Signal," she said. Arun examined it carefully. It was unlike any technology he had seen. The device seemed alive, responding to her touch. She pointed to the sky. "Father. Home. Must know. I walk." Arun understood. She wanted to send a message to her father and her people. He hesitated. The device could attract attention, not only from her people but perhaps from others who might not understand. He studied her face and saw determination. She was ready. "I will help," he said finally. Myra nodded, her silver skin shimmering softly in the afternoon light. She touched his hand briefly. "Friend," she whispered. Together, they worked on the device. Arun followed her instructions carefully, connecting wires, adjusting small panels, and holding delicate components in place. Myra's hands moved gracefully, guiding him. The process took hours. By evening, the device was ready. Myra looked at Arun, her large eyes serious. "Tonight," she said. "Must send." Arun nodded. Tonight. As night fell, the sky was filled with stars. The colony was quiet. Arun and Myra went to the clearing near the edge of the forest. The device hummed softly in her hands. Myra placed it on the ground and touched it with both hands. A beam of light shot upward, straight into the sky. Arun felt a strange vibration in the air. It was not like electricity or sound. It was something deeper, a connection reaching across space. Myra's eyes glowed faintly. She spoke words in her own language. Arun could not understand, but he could feel the meaning. She was calling her father, letting him know that she was alive, that she could walk, and that she had been helped by a human. For a few moments, nothing happened. Arun held his breath. Then the sky above began to change. Faint points of light grew brighter. Stars that had seemed distant flickered and moved. The beam from the device connected with them, sending a message that could not be ignored. Myra stepped forward, walking steadily on her prosthetic leg. She raised her hands toward the sky, speaking in her language with clear strength. Arun watched, amazed at her courage. The colony below remained silent, but in the sky, shapes began to appear. Large vessels emerged from the darkness of space. They moved with precision, blocking out stars as they descended toward the forest clearing. Arun stepped back instinctively, his mind racing. These ships were enormous, their shapes unlike anything humans had built. Yet they did not fire weapons. They hovered, silent but powerful, responding to Myra's call. Myra's eyes shone with pride and relief. She walked forward, her steps steady. She spoke again, and the devices on the ships responded. Arun realized that her father had received the signal. The presence of the ships was not a threat. It was recognition, respect, and attention. The colony began to notice the lights. People came out of their homes, pointing and shouting. Fear spread quickly. Some ran, thinking it was an invasion. Others stayed, frozen by the sight. Arun knew he had to act. "Myra," he said gently, taking her hand. "Stay calm. They are not here to harm you." Myra nodded. She lifted her head, walking closer to the center of the clearing. Her voice was clear and strong. She called to the ships, her tone filled with authority and respect. Arun watched as the vessels adjusted their positions, responding to her words. One of the ships opened a panel, and a smaller craft descended, landing softly on the ground. Arun could see figures inside. They were tall and imposing, their presence commanding attention. Myra stepped forward, standing tall on her prosthetic leg. She spoke again, and the figures nodded. Arun's mind raced. These were not ordinary beings. They were advanced, powerful, and distant. Yet Myra had managed to communicate with them. He realized that the gift of strength he had given her was more than physical. It was confidence, courage, and the ability to command respect even among her people. The smaller craft's door opened fully. A figure emerged, taller than any human, with an air of authority. Myra stepped forward to meet him. Arun stood behind her, watching closely. The figure's eyes scanned the clearing, landing on Arun. For a moment, Arun felt fear. He was human, small, and unarmed. Yet the figure did not show anger. Instead, there was a pause, a recognition of what had been done. Myra spoke clearly, pointing to Arun and then to herself. The figure listened, nodding slowly. Arun could not understand the words, but the tone was calm and approving. Then, in a gesture that surprised him, the figure stepped forward and extended a hand toward Arun. It was a formal greeting, a sign of respect. Arun hesitated, then stepped forward and took it. The strength of the handshake surprised him, but he did not falter. Myra's father looked at Arun, his eyes serious but not threatening. Arun realized that in his world, actions mattered more than words. By giving Myra the ability to walk, he had earned their respect. The ships above adjusted their positions, hovering silently. The colony watched in awe and fear. Arun knew they had never seen anything like this before. Yet there was no attack, no hostility. Only presence, acknowledgement, and recognition. Myra turned to Arun, her eyes shining. She spoke softly, in the language he could understand. "Friend. Strong. You helped." Arun smiled, feeling relief and pride. "Yes. We helped together." The figure beside her nodded, then signaled to the ships. Lights flashed, and the devices on the ground responded. Arun realized that this was a communication of gratitude, a bond being formed between two worlds. For the first time, he understood the depth of what he had done. It was not just repairing a leg. It was building trust, strength, and connection. Myra had sent a message across the stars, and her father had responded. Arun felt the weight of the moment. Human compassion had reached beyond the planet, beyond the sky, and into space itself. Myra walked toward her father, steady and proud. Arun followed, keeping a careful distance. The figure's eyes met his again, and Arun felt a sense of approval. This human had not only helped a child, but had done so with patience, care, and skill. That was worth more than any technology or weapon. As the night deepened, the ships remained above the clearing. Myra's father spoke to her in his own language, pointing occasionally to Arun. She nodded, explaining something in return. Arun could not understand, but he watched as a bond formed between them. Respect, recognition, and trust flowed like a quiet current. Finally, Myra turned to Arun. They know now. You, safe. Here. Arun nodded. Yes. Safe. You too. The stars above sparkled, calm again. The signal had been received, and recognition had been given. Arun realized that this night would change everything. The colony would remember it, Myra would remember it, and he would remember it. A simple act of kindness had reached across galaxies and built trust between two very different worlds. Myra's father signaled again to the ships. The smaller craft opened its doors, ready to transport her if needed. Arun felt a mixture of fear and pride. She was strong now. She could face her people with courage. And so, under the stars, the human and the alien girl stood together. The prosthetic leg had done more than allow her to walk. It had sent a message, opened a door, and shown that strength could be built not only in the body but in the heart. The night was quiet again, but the sky told a story. A story of courage, trust, and the power of kindness that could cross worlds. The morning sun rose over the small human colony, painting the buildings and fields in soft golden light. The air was filled with excitement and tension. The night before, enormous alien ships had hovered above the clearing, responding to Myra's signal. For the humans, it was a terrifying and awe-inspiring sight. For Myra and Arun, it had been a moment of connection across worlds. Now, the final part of their journey had arrived. Myra stood near the edge of the clearing, her prosthetic leg steady and strong. She had practiced walking and running all night. Arun stood beside her, checking that the straps and supports were secure. He felt both pride and nervousness. Myra was about to meet her father in person, and he did not know what to expect. The alien ships above shifted slowly, and one of the larger vessels descended to the clearing. Its surface gleamed under the sunlight, showing intricate designs that seemed to shift and move. The doors of the ship opened smoothly, revealing a ramp that extended to the ground. Myra's father emerged first. He was taller than any human, his skin shimmering with a subtle metallic tone. His presence was commanding, yet there was a softness in his gaze when he looked at Myra. She walked forward confidently, each step a testament to the strength Arun had helped her regain. Arun stayed behind, unsure of how he should act. He had done everything he could to help her, and now he felt small in the presence of her people. Myra stopped a few steps from her father and spoke in her own language. Arun could not understand the words, but he could see her explaining something with gestures and tone. Her father listened carefully, nodding as he watched Myra. Then his eyes turned toward Arun. For a long moment, Arun felt the weight of his gaze. He feared anger, or judgment, or perhaps disbelief. But the expression that met him was different. It was respect. Recognition. Gratitude. Myra's father stepped forward, each movement deliberate and graceful. He stopped a few feet from Arun and studied him quietly. Arun straightened his back, unsure whether to bow or speak. The alien's eyes met his, and in that moment, words were unnecessary. The effort, the care, and the skill Arun had shown were clear to him. Finally, Myra's father extended a hand toward Arun. It was a formal gesture, one that bridged the distance between two very different species. Arun hesitated only for a moment before stepping forward and taking it. The grip was firm but not hostile, a silent acknowledgement that he had done something remarkable. Myra smiled, stepping closer to her father. Arun, helped, she said simply. Her words were clear, and her tone carried pride and joy. Her father looked at Arun again, then turned to Myra. He spoke in his language, gesturing to Arun and then to Myra's leg. Arun did not understand, but he could see the meaning. Myra had walked. Arun had given her strength. That was all that mattered. The father nodded slowly, then signaled to the ship. Several smaller crafts descended from the main vessel. They carried supplies, tools, and devices that Arun had never seen. Myra moved to inspect them, her curiosity bright. Her father followed, watching her interactions closely. Then he spoke again, turning to Arun. This time, Arun caught a few words, repeated slowly and clearly. Human, courage, help, honor. Arun felt warmth in his chest. He realized that in their language, these words carried great weight. He had not only helped a child, but he had earned recognition from an entire world. The humans from the colony watched silently, afraid yet fascinated. They had feared an attack, but now they witnessed a gesture of respect and alliance. Arun understood that the gift of kindness had bridged the gap between species. It had turned fear into admiration, and strangers into allies. Myra stepped forward, her prosthetic leg carrying her confidently. She placed a hand on Arun's shoulder and smiled. Friend. Strong, she said. Arun smiled back. Yes. Friend, he replied. Myra's father gestured to Arun, inviting him to follow. Arun hesitated only for a moment before stepping onto the ship. The interior was vast, with soft light reflecting off smooth surfaces. The technology was unlike anything he had ever seen, but it was designed with elegance and purpose, not intimidation. Myra walked beside her father, explaining quietly in her language. Arun listened and tried to understand through her gestures and tone. She was teaching him about her people, showing him the beauty of their culture and the value they placed on strength and care. They reached a chamber that looked like a hall of honor. Myra's father gestured for Arun to stand in the center. Symbols on the walls glowed softly, responding to his presence. Arun felt both awe and humility. He had repaired machines, helped humans, but now he was being honored by beings from beyond the stars. Myra's father spoke again. Arun could not understand all the words, but the tone was clear. Respect. Gratitude. Recognition. Then, he reached into a compartment and handed Arun a small device. It glowed faintly, indicating a form of communication. It was a gift, a way to stay connected across worlds. Arun accepted it carefully, bowing slightly in gratitude. Myra's father placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked at Arun and smiled. Her eyes shone with pride and love. Arun realized that in her world, family and respect were closely connected. By helping Myra, he had earned the respect of not only her father but her entire people. Outside, the smaller crafts returned to the main vessel. The colony humans watched as the ship slowly rose into the sky, their movements graceful and deliberate. Arun stood near Myra, holding her hand. He felt both wonder and relief. The danger had passed, and recognition had been given. Myra turned to him, her eyes bright. Walk, proud. Father, proud. You, help. Arun nodded. Yes. You strong. You walk proud. The father observed them silently, then made a final gesture. It was a bow, small but significant. Arun understood. He had been accepted, not as an enemy, not as a stranger, but as a friend. For the rest of the day, Arun and Myra explored the ship under the father's supervision. He showed them devices that could enhance strength, tools that repaired damage instantly, and records of countless worlds. Arun absorbed it all with fascination, but he never lost sight of why he was there. Myra had walked again. That was the true gift, and it had been earned through patience, skill, and care. By evening, the ships prepared to leave. Myra hugged Arun tightly. "Friend, always," she whispered. Arun held her close. "Always, Myra," he replied. The ships ascended into the sky, leaving trails of light that faded into the distance. The humans of the colony stared, their fear replaced by wonder. Arun looked at them and raised a hand. "Do not fear," he said. "Kindness and courage can reach beyond the stars." Myra turned to Arun once more. "You, human, strong. Same as me." Arun smiled. "No. Together strong." As night fell, Arun stood in the clearing, watching the stars. He thought of Myra, her father, and the journey they had shared. A simple act of kindness had crossed worlds, creating trust, respect, and friendship. The human colony would remember this day, but more importantly, Arun and Myra would carry it in their hearts forever. The gift of strength had been given. The signal had been heard. And recognition among the stars had been achieved. Myra's voice broke the silence. "One day, visit you, stars." Arun nodded, imagining a future where humans and her people could meet as equals, friends, and allies. "Yes, one day," he said softly. The night air was calm, the stars bright, and the universe seemed closer than ever before. Arun realized that courage, compassion, and skill could reach farther than any technology or weapon. They had built bridges between worlds, not with force, but with heart. In that quiet moment, he knew that this was only the beginning. The stars were vast, but friendship, trust, and kindness could travel across them all. And he would always remember the alien girl who taught him that strength was more than walking. It was caring, trusting, and standing together. The ships had gone, but the bond remained. Arun looked up at the sky one last time that night, knowing that wherever Myra's people went, wherever she went, the gift of strength would travel with her. And in his heart, he carried the truth that one human, with patience and skill, had changed not just one life, but the story of connection across the stars.